Hi guys, Bran here and welcome to a different Xenomorph video. This one is focusing on the educational side. Each Xenomorph skin has its own efficiency to help you win your matches. Every time a new skin comes out, like the Deep Sea Xenomorph skin, and I make a video on it, a lot of you guys ask how do the other skins compare. While this is on my Xenomorph dot guide down in the description of every video, I know some people prefer the video format. So without further ado, let's rank the usefulness of each Xenomorph skin. First, let's define what makes a good Xenomorph skin, specifically the tail. How good the tail is depends on two main factors. First, how close the tail tip is to the actual hitbox generation, assuming that you use the tail tip to aim your tail attack, which you absolutely should. Number two, how much of the screen does the tail itself block, giving you more vision before and during shots, i.e. the best Xenomorph skin is fairly accurate from the tip to the hitbox ratio, and the tail itself doesn't cover very much of the screen, giving you more vision of what is ahead of you. As a very minor aside, while prepping for this video, I did test to see if any of these skins were louder or quieter than the others, but I basically found that they were all relatively the same, with only some minor variation there in the decibel level, so there's not really an advantage or disadvantage to using certain skins, at least when it comes to the sound levels. Other than that, let's go ahead and get into this video and rank all the Xenomorph skins. First, let's go ahead and start off with Default, otherwise known as Big Chap from the original Alien movie. This is the one you're stuck with if you don't buy any skins, so how does it perform? In terms of how much screen that this tail actually blocks, it's fairly thin, meaning it's not going to obscure much of your vision while lining up a tail shot. In terms of using the tail tip to aim, the default is once again pretty average as all things go. It is only slightly horizontally off to the right and a fair bit off vertically, but as you will see as we go through this tier list, that's kind of like part of the course for most Xenomorph skins, is that they're a little bit horizontally off and a good deal, or at least moderately off vertically. So compared to other Xenomorph skins, this is not atrocious at all. I do want to point out here early on as well that if you want to just slap on a crosshair and use that instead, it doesn't really help you that much, since the crosshair will end up wedged somewhere between the tail tip and the actual hitbox generation itself. If you look at this graphic that I have up on the screen right now, you can see that the hitbox generation for the Xenomorph's tail attack is fairly below where the center of the screen is. It doesn't actually come out at the center of the screen. So realistically, unless you want to also account for the crosshair's distance from the hitbox generation, like, that's not really going to help you too much. If you notice in the dot guide that I have, that also has a bunch of instructional videos and GIFs concerning the Xenomorph tail attack from the game side, you'll see that I use a crosshair, like an actual symbol cross, and that's because I'm using the bottom of the crosshair to determine where my tail is vaguely going to land, and I have that crosshair upsized all the way to the max size for that reason. But like I said, if you want to see this and more, make sure you check out the dot guide that's in the description of every video, because that'll show you things more accurately. As for a rating for the default Xenomorph skin, I'd give it a B. The tail is relatively thin, with the tail tip being off horizontally and moderately off vertically, which, like I said, is pretty standard for most of the Xenomorph skins, so that's not too crazy. So it just ends up somewhere being just all right, but not impressive, which honestly is pretty good since the base skin. You may be thinking to yourself, Bran, why is this section even here? Isn't prestige just the exact same as default? And the answer is yes, but for some reason it's like 0.00001% of a weird difference. It's basically negligible, but for the sake of my own sanity, I'm showing you that it's just a smidge off positionally. The texture is different, but the shape is the same. But for some reason, positionally, it's just like, if I overlay them, I can tell that they're just barely not one-to-one, which bothers me. But, you know, TLDR, it's also B, the same level as default. I guess just for whatever reason, it just doesn't line up perfectly. But yeah, it's B, same as the default. The Grid is my personal favorite Xenomorph skin, since Aliens vs. Predator was the first horror movie I was ever allowed to watch start to finish. Grid will always have a soft spot for me no matter how it fares, but how does it fare performance-wise? Well, it's not ideal. And that's me being kind. First, the tail is rather bulky, having a lot of these little threads that come off the top and bottom of it, hanging right in front of your screen. So your screen visibility is a little bit less than ideal. As for the tail tip itself, there's another instance of it being unfortunately undesirable. The main issue is that the tail tip curves up and away from the center part of the screen, giving an additional variable to try and account for in addition to the horizontal and vertical planes. This then makes the tail a good bit off horizontally and vertically at the same time, making it far less than ideal. With all of these not so great aspects coming together, the Grid ultimately lands in a C tier rating, just a bit below average. The Deep Sea skin is a popular one, and at the time of recording, the most recent Xenomorph skin released. It is aesthetically one of the coolest skins in the game as well, with so many bells and whistles that really remind you of that deep sea kind of anglerfish aesthetic. But how does it perform? The Deep Sea Xenomorph skin is actually special in the way that it actually has the thinnest tail out of any Xenomorph skin in the game, making it the best Xenomorph skin if you like having your screen as clear as possible. However, the tail tip is unique as well, and the fact that it is the most vertically off tail tip in the game, being way high above where your actual hitbox would be. It is also a bit horizontally off as well, just like all the other tail tips. I still would have rated the Deep Sea Xenomorph skin fairly high based on having the thinnest tail for visibility, but this skin has an additional negative to contend with, that being your head crest, which sticks above loops, making it hard to loop since this sells you out in the middle of mind games. The extreme positives and the extreme negatives all balance out into a middle zone, that being a B tier rating. It's not awful, realistically, it's just alright. The Molting Skin, not to be confused with the Xenomorph add-on Blighted Skin, is a rather unique Xenomorph skin that came out with the Chrysalis collection. How does it hold up performance-wise though? This tail is extremely thin, a very close second to the Deep Sea skin. Regardless, the visibility is a non-issue with this skin. The tail tip is also extremely stellar, being almost horizontally perfect and actually not being that too far off vertically. This tail tip is excellent for aiming, requiring very little adjustment on your part if you use the tail tip to aim. Also, for those of you that may be wondering, you may be noticing the little ambient moss that are floating around the skin and worried if those sell you out during loops. I am happy to report that despite the fact that it looks like they will, during the actual match, the moss don't really stray far from the Xenomorph's body, making it to where it barely affects your loops at all. With basically no downsides and a lot of pluses, the Molting Skin actually gets an A rating, making it one of the best skins to use on the Xenomorph. The Juggernaut skin is an interesting one, as it used to be objectively the worst Xenomorph skin in the game, being horribly inaccurate and blocking about half of the screen. Thankfully though, Behavior decided to go in and adjust it to be more usable. So how did the final results compare? Well, first, the tail is moderately bulky, being a bit thicker than the default, but not by a huge margin. The most visual pollution you will have here will actually be near the tail tip itself, as there's a lot of tubes and weird bits sticking out right in the middle of your vision. It's not really awful, but it's not like good either. The tail tip itself is almost the exact same as default as well, being slightly horizontally off and vertically off by a moderate amount. If you're used to the default tail tip and want something that feels similar but looks cooler, Juggernaut will hardly feel like a change for you. Overall, Juggernaut kind of balances out in the B tier, being kind of just below where default and prestige hits, but not quite bad enough to enter C tier. The Clone Skin, or as I humorously like to call it, Pork Chop, is a puzzling skin that is revolting in its visual design, but as a result has a unique charm to it. But how charming is it to use in effectiveness? First off, this is ultimately the bulkiest Xenomorph tail in the game. While it is not as thick in the tail itself like the Grid skin was, there is this big chunky bulb shape that makes up most of the tail tip that sticks right in the center of your vision. If you hate those little tubes and bits that stick out at the center of the screen while using the Juggernaut skin, this is the big cheese. This will block most of your vision if you like having the center of your screen open. This thing will aggravate you. In addition, the center of the screen is the area you need most for prepping and aiming your tail attacks. So to have this big bulky bulb in the middle of it, it's just really questionable. As if that wasn't bad enough, it also shares the Grid's problem of having an upturned curved tail tip, giving you an extra variable to worry about while aiming. That makes it moderately off horizontally and vertically at the same time. While the Clone Skin is not as bad as other skins in individual departments, it's undesirable in every category to a moderate extent, culminating in it getting the dreaded D tier rating. If you like using skins for efficiency in Dead by Daylight, I'd avoid this one. The Queen skin is probably the most popular alien skin in Dead by Daylight, and arguably one of the best skins in the game, and for all the wrong or right reasons depending on who you ask. Despite her impressive appearance in Aliens making her one of the most iconic horror antagonists in cinema, Beaver decided to, upgrade her assets a bit. Now, despite the community's fanfare over this skin, how good is it to actually use? The tail itself is incredibly thin, putting it into the same department as the Deep Sea and Molting Skins. In addition, the tail tip itself is also extremely thin, basically making it to where this tail doesn't obscure your vision at all. The tail tip itself is also excellent, being basically perfectly horizontal, meaning all you have to worry about is the vertical offness, and that's not even off by that much. This would have made the Queen the best skin so far, But I bet you know what I'm about to talk about. The Queen Skin's head crest sticks up over loops, just like the Deep Sea Skin's head crest does. This makes it much harder to loop, since whenever you do mind games, the survivor could just see your little head crest sticking up over the loop and react accordingly. This is a shame because this was shaping up to be our best skin so far and make it a true S tier, but because of the head crest thing, I unfortunately do have to put her into A tier, which is still among the best, but definitely not the best. Blighted Xenomorph skin has had some controversy over the years for its eye sockets being visible, which usually isn't a trait of the Xenomorph's trademark design. However, many praise it for its uniqueness and its detailed, more aggressive animation. However, we aren't here to discuss the aesthetics of the skin, we are here to discuss how good it is to use. The Blighted skin sports one of the thinnest tails in the game, right up there with the Molting and Queen skins. However, what makes this tail special is the tail tip itself is also extremely thin, being this stinger-like barb, meaning that this tail basically takes up no screen space whatsoever and would be the #1 thinnest tail in the game if it weren't for the Deep Sea Xenomorph skin. The tail tip itself is ridiculous, to put it lightly. It is the selling point of this skin. So much so, frankly, that I find it kind of absurd. Compared to every other tail tip diagram where I put this little white strip to show you the distance between where the tail tip is and where the hitbox generates, I had to shrink this thing down so far to the point where it's barely visible, because it's so close to where the hitbox actually generates. This is about the closest you are going to get to a 1-to-1 crosshair between the tail tip and where the hitbox actually generates. It's not even by a little bit. This is a wide margin in which this tail tip is way more accurate than every other skin in the game. The only downside of this skin is the same issue that all Blighted skins have, the fact that you're very bright orange and glowing, but if you play Xenomorph even to a moderately frequent extent, you know that the motion sensors and the flame turrets are already kind of ruining your consistency with stealth anyways, so it's not like you were over relying on that as a strategy anyways. So you probably already guessed it with all these positive traits. That's right, Blighted Xenomorph is S tier. This is hands down the best skin to get for the Xenomorph if you're looking for something that's efficient and top tier to use. So by looking at what we've said so far, our top 3 skins are Blighted, Molting, and the Queen skin, which is a great group because not only are they effective to use, but also very aesthetically impressive skins as well. Although personally I can still get a lot of work done with a lower tier skin like the Grid, despite it being so low on our ranking, so don't let it dissuade you. This is more here as just a warning to know what you're working with going into getting each of these skins. Other than that, that's it for today's video, friends. What is your favorite Xenomorph skin that you use out there in the fog? Let me know down in the comments below. Speaking of things that you like, you should probably like this video and subscribe to let me know that I'm doing a good job on the back end. On that, hopefully this video made your day a little bit better today, friends. If it didn't, I'll try to make your day better in the next video. And if I don't see you there, you know that thing I always say, I'll see you when I see you, friends. Goodbye.